right, so today, Dani and I, you see Dani on the big screen there. We've been working together for quite a while now. We actually have a fortnightly catch-up where we just talk about dynamics and Power Platform and AI and what's happening in that space. And so we're kind of working on this sort of agentic AI system for helping with the requirements lifecycle management. Both of us do quite a lot of, I guess, work in this space. And we're going to show you today is kind of some of the stuff we've been working on. It's all completely in progress. It's some of the stuff we've been tinkering away at in the last couple of weeks. So we're just going to continue to build this kind of system out as we go. And it's just I guess one example of how you can use AI, and it's turned into a thing that's not really specific to requirements lifecycle anymore. It's this kind of own little system, but we'll explain that through the lens of requirements gathering. Dani, do you want to come off mute for a second and just introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi all, my name is Dani Kahil. As Hamish was saying, has been an exciting journey working with about AI and trying to keep up to date with things. And I don't remember how many times we have started over with things and experimenting with things, but it's part of the fun. Looking forward to show you a bit, the ideas we have and the framework, and get your thoughts as well, feedback, questions, anything. I think that's it.
Yeah. Right, so just to kind of set the scene and kind of why we've put this sort of framework together is, I think we all know when we're going through requirements gathering or starting off with requirements, a lot of it is people having conversations and workshops and those sorts of things, and we end up with workshop transcripts and recordings and messy notes and diagrams everywhere. And we spend a lot of time on projects, taking that information and trying to put it into, say, user stories and keeping our Azure DevOps up to date and keeping our design documents up to date. And we're not very good at that. That ends up getting out of date very quickly, right? We either don't do it well or we sometimes don't do it at all. And so behind this is we keep the system we've got with AI is we keep the conversations and the kind of the naturally human stuff to the people. They can concentrate their time doing that, and taking away that sort of hard part where it's keeping documents and knowledge about a project up to date. Your decisions register, your risk register, those sorts of things. We want to take that kind of workload away from people so they can just focus on doing what we do best, which is thinking of ideas, coming up with solutions, solving problems, having conversations, right? And so that's the premise behind it all. And little AI generated pictures here, right, is I guess if we think about traditional requirements gathering, if you're on a big project, it can be really confusing about where to start, what to do. You've got all these different artifacts spread everywhere, and we've now got this AI tool in the middle, and we can ask it questions. But what I'm finding is if you don't give that AI tool the right context and the right information to start off with, you actually end up making this mess bigger. And I've had scenarios of that very recently, actually, where I've been given requirements or documents to look at. It hasn't, the AI something around it in the right information, and those things are wrong. And then we spend more time reviewing and fixing all those requirements. So AI is a great tool, but if you don't use it properly, it actually makes the mess bigger. It makes more work for us instead of making less. And so that's kind of the problem we're trying to tackle with this thing called very unique name, the Agentic system. But this is kind of the way that Dani and I are thinking about AI at the moment. And the idea is, in the yellow, you've got stakeholders and clients that you work with on a project. You've usually got a project team, and it could be developers and business analysts and these people who are doing the project. Those two sets of people need to work together to come up with some sort of solution, right? And the way that it typically works is you'll have conversations and workshops and emails back and forth between project team and the stakeholders. And the idea is that all these kind of raw materials, we have them as workshop transcripts, documents, notes, emails, all sorts of things come into this bucket at the top. Then when it comes into, I guess this kind of piece on the right-hand side is what I call the agentic system. Personally, I'm using Copilot Cowork to drive all this. Dani uses Claude Code, but this little thing here could be any AI tool that you use, right? And so the whole kind of system is AI tool agnostic. What makes this work versus not work? So what kind of works without creating a mess in that previous slide is this thing, the knowledge in memory is kind of what I'm calling it for a loose term. But the idea is those transcripts and source materials come into the agent and it will update its own knowledge and memory, those conversations it had. So as the project goes on, it keeps and then a very accurate sort of knowledge base of inside these, like, it's just basically text files, but I have a text file for, say, like a business overview, each of the user personas, their pain points, like every little bit of knowledge you need to know about a project is structured in there. And when Copilot updates that, using the transcripts or source materials, I have a review process as well. So it goes, I'm going to update these files. Can you make sure that it's accurate? And so what happens is after every conversation or whatever I have with clients, I run the agent against that and it goes and updates its own memory. And the way that it does that is through skills. So I assume everyone's heard of skills by now. Yep. So skills are like a procedure or steps that the agent needs to follow. And so I have a skill for every sort of document that I have in the knowledge. So I have a create the persona skill. I have the document the business process skill. I have different skills for different things. And so that makes sure that when I'm building my knowledge and memory, it's structured and it's consistent, it's the same each time. Obviously the content's slightly different, but then it again makes it really easy for AI to read it later on. And then we've also got data.
You're getting your transcripts and source materials like from Teams,
yep,
etc. And when somebody obviously adds something with it or types something in there, it's picking that up.
Yeah, yeah.
My question is though, it's great it does that, but to what level? How does it know what's important?
Yeah, so as the project team, they are at the moment, because it's all very new, it's heavily, I'm telling Cowork what to do all the time. So I'm actually pushing those files in. This is not automatic. This is very, there's a human orchestrator in all of this. And I'll show you an example, but I just say, hey, here's a meeting from today. And if you're on Cowork, you can go, you tag the meeting. Can you look at this meeting and these emails I have with this client and go and update my project artifacts? And it will use its skills and it'll know exactly what it needs to do. It uses its skills to do what it needs to do. And then it goes and updates the things. It then tells me, hey, I think we should change these things. Do you agree? And I go, yep. Or I can give it comments to say, don't. And what should be different? And it goes and updates it. Yep.
So my understanding and framework though of knows what to do, we all know things can go rogue or go different than what we expect.
Yeah.
So creating that framework of knowing what to do is where I still miss the point.
So I have in my skills,
yeah.
I have a skill called update artifacts.
Yeah.
And what it does is it knows that it takes some source materials inside and it will go through and it knows it needs to go and look at everything in its knowledge, look at those, compare them to the source materials, spot the differences, and then make suggestions around what should be updated in the knowledge. And then I will review all of those suggestions and go, yep, apply all of those, or no, or I'll say, actually, you made a mistake here. It should be this.
So
I'm always in control of it. Yeah.
Or maybe I'll reframe that. Understanding the baseline as to what should be going on. You know, we're creating this magical widget that's got 5 things that it needs to do.
Yeah.
So you had the conversations, it's sort of drawn it in, but understanding still, even though you've got your agents or your skills to have certain information, I still wonder about the baseline of understanding to get the end result. I understand to getting end result and everybody talks about it, but to me, I'm a granular person and understanding.
Yeah. So maybe I need to go a bit deeper. So in the skills, so let's take a really concrete example. I've got a persona file, and in a persona skill that goes and reads transcript and will populate a persona which describes who the person is, what their job is, what their pain points are, what tools and systems they currently use. And that is actually a template. I've got a template with different sections that describes what goes in the next section, and then a skill that also says how to populate those. And I've determined exactly how it should write in those sections. And so there's the combination of these two things here is what makes this really powerful. And I've spent a lot of time building those out. But that's, yeah, and that's the secret sauce of it, right? That's how you get consistency. Yeah. Ben.
I'd love to just see it in a bit more, maybe rather than that. Kind of talking about how it might work, but I suspect you've got more to show. Maybe we should.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, we'll come. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. And then obviously, we'll be familiar with connectors, right? So AI tools can connect to other systems. And so, as an example, I've got mine connected to Miro to draw diagrams for me. And so the whole idea is the agent's building its own knowledge and memory. It's got skills to do things, and then we can output artifacts. So like I can get it to draw diagrams and output solution design documents and things to my specifications that I've put into the skills. So maybe we get into some examples of it all, just to kind of help bring it to life.
Thank you.
Let's skip that. The premise of all this, right, is AI does all this heavy lifting around sort of typical project artifacts. We can just have our conversations, right, and they feed through to the agent. But obviously, go back to this diagram just to be very clear, that project team in the middle, or there's someone driving the AI all the time. It's not an autonomous agent at all. Right, Dani, I want to hand over to you to talk about one of the key parts of this, which is called the business context, which is the stuff that goes into that knowledge memory. So this is the kind of the detail.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll be driving the presentation, Hamish? Is good?
I'll drive for now, shall I? Then when you do your demo, we'll flip over.
Yeah, perfect. No worries. So look, this is something hopefully some of you are starting to use. I've been using this for quite a bit now, but especially at the beginning of a project where you start, it's a lot of information to process, a lot of information to kind of walk through. So what I'm using AI mostly for is trying as quickly as possible to understand the business context of the whole project and the company for whom I'm doing the services of the implementation, right? So as part of the business context, there might be products or services that the company is providing. There might be the business problems and opportunities, the customer, the channels, and so forth. So you might be lucky and you might get some of these documents and some of the information documented, but sometimes it's just missing, right? So Hamish, I'll actually drive because I will use my mouse to kind of show people. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. That's all good.
Okay, let me know if that works. Can you guys see my screen?
It's coming. Yep, there we go.
Excellent, good. Because then I can use my mouse to kind of guide a bit. So there is these elements, but there is also the stakeholders, the persona, the solution landscape. A lot of things that I would like to know as quickly as possible. And when you get a lot of information at the beginning, it's quite tricky to kind of get a sense of all this information, right? So I've been using a lot, previously it was researcher, now it's Copilot, whatever. But if essentially whatever I can find information about the company using AI to summarize for me all these items, whether I have documents from the client, I can then, in a secure tenant, whether that's working with the client or getting their approval, uploading to my tenant, upload some of the documents and use AI to brainstorm some of these ideas and some of these elements that, especially at the beginning of the project, is quite critical for you to get that knowledge as quickly as possible so that you can be very sharp and very precise doing workshops and meetings at the beginning. So I use AI a lot to kind of brainstorm that at the beginning. What I found valuable for me, for example, is using AI to research about the business context, research about the stakeholders, the persona, solution landscape, risk, whatever you can kind of think of researching at the beginning, and then kind of compiling that into a workbook or a notebook, whatever you want to use, to then what I was doing recently, and I keep on doing this, is try to get as much information as possible, and then you can, for example, use an audio overview and go for a walk. So I love walking personally. It's how I process and brainstorm. So what I would do if I receive some information and I want to process all that, I would go for a walk and then process all that information, trying to understand all these elements while I walk or while I, do something, because that's how I process information. I've been using quite a lot also whenever there's actually a browser representation of very often I would do that actually quite on every project that I start, especially at the beginning. I would go and have a chat with AI, like explain for me the whole process for company and industry. And most of the time, this is in like publicly available information. So whatever tool you want to use, you can, but kind of go into brainstorming mode with my AI to try to, as much as possible, understand that business context. And if possible, then generating, if some of these artifacts are important and valuable, generating some of these artifacts as PDF or additional documents that we can then feed as knowledge to our AI agent that will kind of use that for context of the project. So yeah, hopefully to hear your thoughts if you guys have been using kind of same techniques, but every single project I remember I started in the past year, it's kind of a way of I just go and kind of chat with the AI about the whole project product challenges of the client. And it really kind of helps me being very up to date from the very beginning when we start the project on workshops. Hamish, is that your piece now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Any question in the room before we continue on this?
I'd like to add something, Dani. So something that I've been doing, which is
Yes.
really helpful, is I go and read or ask Copilot to summarize the organization's annual report, if they have one, before COVID, and then 2 years back. So whatever happened in like 2019, and then the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Because so much information from where they were before COVID and how they had to dig themselves out of COVID.
Yeah. All right. That's interesting. Yeah, nice. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah, and so what Dani's just showed us here is how do we actually get started with all of this? So we want to start building up that knowledge and memory. This is a great way to do it, right? I mean, so there's different ways you can do this, right? But obviously research done a bunch of research. Danny's then had a chat with Copilot about that research. He can give Copilot his thoughts and take that conversation he's had with Copilot and chuck it into the raw material into that memory system. So yeah, it's a great way to get started.
Dani, David, so when doing your research, whatever time frame that you're looking at, has that really not got to be public information?
Sorry, the beginning of your question, because it was a little bit because of the room. Can you repeat that?
So when doing your research,
Yes.
and taking all the information about the company, whatever time frame that you're looking at,
yeah,
I suggested a great idea, do it pre-COVID and then a couple of years after, which is awesome idea. But is that not still relying on public information, unless if you're with the company that you're doing the project for and they open things up, it's still relying on public information. Would that be correct?
Yeah, correct. So I'm doing a kind of two type of research, right? If you're lucky, you will get a lot of documents from your clients, and then using Copilot, whether that's in the client tenant or in your tenant, if you have their approval, you can do a kind of summary of all the documentation they provided to you, right? And then you can also summarize and summarize that in a voice. And then I'm doing another check as well, is when I go for my walks, I research about publicly available information. It's really unstructured. I'll really take my phone and I say, I am going to start working with company X in that industry, highlight for me the business challenges, the end-to-end process, the typical persona, and I go really with that and I go for a walk and discuss throughout the walk all kind of questions I have with chat, and all these questions, that second research, it's all kind of publicly available information that sometimes you don't get, or often you actually don't get from your clients, just to kind of really understand the context of where I'm stepping in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dani. All right, so we'll get through to some demos now, actually show you, some of what this actually looks like. So what I'm going to show you now is a thing called a journey map, which is an artifact that I create for workshops. And we have I have this other thing, I'm not going to go into this any detail at all, but basically a framework, what we call a design sprint, which helps clients go from discovery through to prototyping, testing out a Copilot agent. And it's got a series of steps of workshops and things. And so I've got a workshop in the middle here called the journey map and ideation workshop. But I've got to do a whole bunch of prep work for that. And you'll see here earlier we talked about business context. We've got a business context box, which Dani going to describe how we start to build that up. So it's kind of this context of the business at a very high level. We use that as inputs. I've got another workshop where we define the challenge with the client as well. And so we've got a bunch of inputs coming into this journey map. And so those inputs, just imagine, are going into that memory or that brain. We've had those conversations, and we're chucking it all in there. In terms of a journey map, again, I'm not going to go into some detail because I've got quite a lot of stuff to cover. I actually want to show you the AI bit. But a journey map is kind of a structured sort of workshop tool that we use, where we basically, it's used to kind of discover a user's journey through an existing process. What are their pain points? What are the opportunities that we have with tech to overcome those pain points? And I usually do it on a Miro whiteboard with sticky notes so we can collaborate together and change ideas and move things around. But to set up this before AI is I'd have to, on my brain and all the documents that I have about the customer, go and manually put this together, which would probably be quite inconsistent and would take me a couple of hours to kind of pre-populate this based on the discussion I have with the client. And then we go into the workshop, we review this with the client, and they add in more detail that's missing, because you don't always get things right in the first conversation. So what I want to show you here is how do I get AI to create this for me based on our little framework. Right, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Cool. So, hands up if you used Copilot Cowork before, or Claude Cowork? A few. Okay, I'm going to have to do a quick intro. Okay, so the way that it works, it's this. So this is Copilot Cowork, very similar to Claude Cowork if you're familiar with that. It looks like Copilot Chat, but the kind of difference is that Copilot Chat does kind of one task at a time. Copilot Cowork, well, you give it a whole series of tasks or an objective to achieve. It will create its own plan step by step and then go through and execute those. And so I've got a chat in the middle where I tell her what to do. And so that's me, as if you look at that diagram, me as the project team, I'm now telling Copilot Cowork what to do. On the right-hand side, there's a few kind of important things here. We've got the steps. So if it's a multi-step process, it will plan out the steps and tell you what those steps are there. I've got some tools. So this is my Miro connected I'm connecting to. It produces a whole bunch of outputs. So these outputs here, these are all of the files that make up that memory or that knowledge, and they're all very structured in a certain way. So if I open up one, for example, here's my persona record, loading up. All my persona records have got the same sections, and they're all populated in the same way. So I've got this kind of knowledge about each persona I'm working with. And then also, for example, I've got interesting. Oh my God, it's not doing so well here. Let's have a look at a process context. The process context, which has a whole bunch of information about the process, who the personas are, what steps are there. I mean, it's very detailed, performance measures, all these sorts of things that are key inputs for knowledge for any project we're working on, right? And stuff that we just forget all the time, and you would never document it to that level normally. And then we've got references. So these are the inputs. So Dani showed on his slide a whole bunch of PDF documents from his researcher. These are literally those documents from researcher, but they could also be, some of his chat discussion or whatever with researcher too, discussions with the clients initially. And so what we've got here is we've got this Australian university example. This is a fictitious example. Dani does a lot of work with universities in Australia. And so how this chat works is I give it a very simple prompt and I say, and this is setting up the initial project initially. So I said, it attaches the background documentation I have, run the populate skills. The populate skills is a series of skills that I've got set, and we can see that they are down. Here's a populate journey map and a new project skill. Obviously, go and build out those artifacts, my process context, personas, glossary, those sorts of things. And those is what it's going to put into the output here. So I'm not going to run this in real time because this takes like minutes for Copilot Cowork to do all this sort of stuff. But I'll kind of go, I'll run you through. It tells you what it's thinking and doing, and so go through for a bit. Writes the documents, tells me what it's written. It's really good at even just doing things. I instruct it to tell me when there's gaps and things, and here you go, gaps, things that need to be confirmed with the client. So the next time I go into a workshop, I can go, hey, what are our outstanding questions? And I can bring those along to the next workshop without having to remember them. So that's kind of an example of how we can start populating that memory or that knowledge. Then I've gone through, sorry, a bit of stuff to scroll through here. And I said, let's build a persona journey. And what I've got here is I've got a populate journey map skill. And it takes all that input context, and mostly it's reading from this scholarships process context. And it goes away and it goes and creates the stuff on the board, and then tells me at the end, I've done it. Here's a link to the Miro board, and just gives me an overview of what it's done. So if I go to my Miro board, this is what it took a lot for me to write the skills to get it to space everything out nicely and put them into nice rows and the right colors and everything. So the skill does all of that, and it's a lot of refinement, but based on those input reference documents that Dani had provided and it described a process, it output all of this. And so that's my workshop prep done. I need to go through and review it, obviously, but I've got to a point where I'm so confident in this model, and that the fact that I'm building up this memory that's really accurate, these outputs are really accurate as well. I'm not getting any of this AI hallucinations that we used to get. And that's just down to the skill files, the way they're written, and also that memory and how it's so structured and precise. That's, yeah. And so this here would probably take me a couple of hours usually to do. And now it's 10 minutes to go and have a quick review of it all.
And if you tried to do something like this 2 years ago?
Oh, impossible. This is like the last few months, couple of months. Yeah. Even at the start of this year, Dani, I did a demo of this. I did it a completely different way because it wasn't possible in January. So this is where things are at. Yeah. Let's go back to the presentation. I know we're a fair bit to get through. Okay, Dani, this is you. I'll hand over to you to your slide.
Yeah. Excellent, cool. So I'll take over again. Let me know what you guys can see. Good?
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So this is, look, as Hamish was saying, it is a work in progress. It actually takes a lot of time and researching, and each time we kind of make some progress with Hamish. There is a new tool, there is a new technology coming in. So it has been a little bit bumpy, to be fair, but I think the approach, whatever tool and whatever AI we use, the approach still makes sense. And the approach really for managing requirements from what we kind of brainstorm with Hamish is really trying to help you spend more time client facing and brainstorming really ideas instead of doing all the documentation kind of the heavy lifting documentation behind the scenes. And the idea is, look, if you get an artifact, whether that's a transcript, a document, whatever, the idea is that you can have AI agents helping you create and manage information, right? Knowledge as well, right? So some of these might be the stakeholders on the project. So you can now do stakeholder management on your project, right? You can create an update persona, you can create an update solution landscape, risks, requirements, and so forth, right? So we have been testing this out. Like, I'm not using this on real clients yet because, as Hamish was saying, like, I'm experimenting mostly with Cloud Code, and Cloud Code doesn't sit into the Microsoft tenants, right? So I cannot use it on my real clients. I just hope that fairly soon I can use something similar to Cloud Code in Microsoft, the Microsoft ecosystem. I think Microsoft was talking about Copilot Code coming soon. Hopefully I can reuse that. But Hamish is using Cowork, and using Cowork that actually works pretty well. But the idea is that you get some artifacts and you have agents using knowledge, skills, and so forth, helping you manage that. And how does that look like? Well, if you think about one single requirement, for example, if you have all these agents working for you, then your requirement can be created with a title, a description, some acceptance criteria, but you can also straight away, like, everything could be, like, in theory, if you implement it well and you kind of fine tune it over time, the idea is that, well, you will be able to trace directly the requirements to the stakeholder that mention it, because you have the recording and you have the artifact. So you can mention the stakeholders that ask for that requirements. You can link them automatically to personas. You can also link them to solution ideas and related system. Let's say a requirement is about a specific integration of a core university system. You can actually have that documented that is actually linked to that system. You can relate risk, and you can extend that, right? It's not set in stone, but the framework is that using AI to help you document these items and manage that for you. Of course, like, you have to review everything. So it's not doing the whole work for you. The idea is that it's capturing for you the essence of the information and showing it for you for reviewing. And over time, you can, with instruction and skills, you can fine tune your instructions and your skills to be more and more accurate. So it's not a single shot. You have to kind of spend time in maintaining that. But that's kind of the ideas. And again, if you start capturing and managing this kind of requirements, then you can really start asking questions like, who asked the question, how many times what was it asked, what meeting was it asked in, what solution are related, what are the risks related to certain requirements. Like, you can start chatting with your AIs to ask all these questions about your requirements, right? Which also, looking down, you can organize your requirements, you can prepare for future workshops, like looking at the requirements, what are the items that aren't clear, or the acceptance criteria that are a bit vague, like, let's organize a workshop around that, right? Because you can look at all this information. You can also help, like, we nowhere near this piece here, but it can also help you build or design solutions. Once it has all this knowledge, all this context, the idea is that maybe it can kind of propose to you some solution ideas. And you go from really your day-to-day documenting activities like you were doing in the past to really interacting, brainstorming with your client, and you have a set of AI helping you in the background brainstorm and document everything, right? That's kind of the North Star. As I was saying, we not nowhere there. While I was experimenting, and I will show you an app that I'm using internally. I'm experimenting for managing stakeholders and managing requirements. So those two agents, I want to nail one or two agents with instructions first before I'm going to move to the next one. As I was saying, it takes a lot of time to fine tune this and so forth. But really, the idea. Let me show you a bit what I'm experimenting with. So just back to this process here. So Hamish is using Cowork. I'm using Cloud Code to process the transcript and using memory and skills to update and maintain the requirements and the personas and all this in Dataverse. But that can be any database, right? That can be any storage where you have a logical way of grouping your requirements. In normal large project, you will use Azure DevOps, Jira, whatever tool you want to use to store kind of your requirements, projects, personas, and so forth. We started using Dataverse with Hamish because Dataverse is so extensible now. So we're using also Cloud Code to design our tables, design our the fields and everything. So it's so much more extensible where I can create a persona table, I can create a risk table, I can create all kind of structure I want, where Azure DevOps were a bit more limiting. So to do our prototyping and our research, we're reusing a database on Dataverse, and that looks like something like this, where you have, your projects, you have your meetings, you have your company stakeholders. So for example, if I take the scholarship management accelerator or the scholarship management app that Hamish was showing before, well, using some artifacts, you can, generate the description. So a lot of this information can be generated for you, right? But the idea is that as you work with your AI, whether that's Cowork or any other AI in the future, as documents are being or artifacts are being generated through your conversation, you can use AI to then fine-tune and update your personas, update your stakeholders, update your requirements, right? So an idea, for example, for this one, if I show you one requirement, so we created something using generative pages, which is very similar to how Azure DevOps works. But for example, if I have my list of epics, features, and requirements, if I go to that requirement here, and I open, it's simply a record in Dataverse, right? I open my requirement, very simple. I have an AI Insights requirement. So the idea is that when you work with AI, my thought process is you want AI to generate for you an insight about your requirements before you update the real requirements. So that's kind of your insights from a specific workshops. So requirement detail, the description, the acceptance criteria, open questions, evidence snippets, related stakeholders. And once you're happy with this, you can link it to the requirement or create a new requirement, and that will update your requirement directly here. So yeah, it's a lot going on. I'm stopping to share now. A lot going on, but effectively, the idea is that having all these pieces of AI agents working on a specific, part of the documentation you have to maintain to simply help you be more up to date, be more aware of what's happening, have the latest information, use AI to help you prepare for the following workshops and ask the right questions in case you forgot anything, right? So that's really where we are with things. I'm happy to address any questions. Is there anything else, Hamish, we have to present still, or?
Oh, I've got something else to show. Yeah.
There was a question from Vineet asking if it can be connected to GitHub. And I guess if it does Jira or DevOps or whatever, then it can actually do that too. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's external connector, right? So
Exactly.
There's an ADO with GitHub Copilot.
Yeah, I think the idea there, right, is we've purposely chosen to use different AI tools to prove the pattern actually works regardless of what AI tool you've got. And then, so I think Vineet talked to us about GitHub Copilot. You can just switch out Claude Code for GitHub Copilot. You can use any. We are in my diagram where it says Cowork. That could be any AI tool. But usually the kind of like the Cowork or GitHub kind of like ones where they can do longer running thinking rather than a chat version, if that makes sense. Yeah. David.
Can I just say, doing an AI summarize from what I've seen presented today, reminds me of when I first got into CRM in the first place, was understanding what Sure Step was. And the creation of documentation.
Using words like that, David, they will tell people how old we are.
That's okay, I'm old. But the whole thing I love about this is that you haven't got static documents that you fill in. You've got live documents that you can tweak, adjust, and continually adjust for not only your clients, but within your journey of understanding what we're doing. It's freaking awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
So yeah, I've got something else to show. I have a little bit of time here, Dan. I thought we were going to run out because usually we do, but I mean, it's just in terms of the app that Dani shows. So we've taken like two massively different directions, the same concept. So
Yeah.
his knowledge and everything's very well structured in Dataverse. Mine's a bit more of a mess because mine's in text, like markdown files, text files, and they're just stored in SharePoint. But because I have skills to write them in a consistent manner, they're actually quite structured. And when I open them, they're very well structured. So it doesn't have to be Dataverse. I think what I have been using this tool for writing user stories and its requirements. I probably wouldn't put those into I've got it to split out to an Excel spreadsheet. But as Dani said, they're better. I think you can have a combination of data sources, right? So for kind of personas and more wordy stuff, have them in text files. More structured things like user stories, risk register, decision register should probably be in something like Dataverse or Azure DevOps or something that's a bit more structured. But you can have different data sources for this, right? And you can see I'm outputting to Miro as well. So we've got all these different places where I can put my artifacts. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like over the last few weeks, AI, for me anyway, has really kind of sunk in with this in terms of what is now possible. Dani?
Yeah, remember, so we had an interesting conversation with Hamish, I think a week or two ago. So I'm not sure about you, I'm mostly building like Power Platform, Microsoft apps for clients, right? So imagine if you can have all your requirements, like your whole context of your project stored somewhere, like in Dataverse or whatever, but then you switch and use at the same time AI tools to build your apps, right? And that's what I'm forcing myself to really learn how to use Claude Code and the Dataverse MCP and all these, because you can literally chat with your agent to build a data schema, to build a table, to build the forms and everything. So the idea is, and we're not there yet, is you have all these requirements, living documentation there, and then you can use other AI agents to help you build the new landscape of application using that knowledge. So that's where we hopefully can get at some point. But yeah, it's definitely a long way.
Yeah, the second time, right? I mean, like I've got visions of going back to this diagram again. Instead of having Cowork build a custom Copilot Studio agent, which is a bit more refined. So I'm finding at the moment Copilot Cowork can't overwrite files in SharePoint. So I'm manually copying the outputs into my SharePoint folder, which is niggling me. So that's where a Copilot Studio agent would be good. And you think that these things called skills, right? So skills at the moment, they're markdown files sitting in my SharePoint. But if you keep up with the Dataverse news is they have now a few months ago introduced business skills. So your skills are stored in Dataverse, and so like all these concepts and your skills are came from Anthropic, right? So all these concepts, doesn't really matter what tooling you're using, they're gonna transfer across to if you decide to change AI tools, it's all going to work. One thing I did want to show, if we've got a bit of time, is I showed you how we used Miro, and I also showed you how to kind of set up a brand new project. And what I want to talk you through is that concept of we've got an existing project set up, we've got existing files in there. I've had another workshop and I wanted to update existing files. How does that process look in terms of making sure that AI is not writing crap and I'm human in the loop. So how that process works is I've already got in my references, these are my the knowledge files. These are my markdown files with my workshops, personas, business context, decision register. So those are existing files in the references. And then output is where it's going to create new versions of those through this chat, and I actually have to copy those back into my preferences folder, but that's another thing. So how it works is I am the orchestrator of Copilot, so it won't do anything until I tell it to. And I'm saying here, I need to update my project artifacts for this example projects. Step one, read the transcript of the workshop notes I've got here, and then all the existing project artifacts that are related. And I've actually decided to point them exactly at those artifacts, because as projects get bigger and you've got like 30 or 40 kind of knowledge or memory files for the projects, what I'm finding, especially with Copilot Cowork, because it consumes credits, is you don't want it to say, hey, go look at the whole folder, only look at what you need to. So this is kind of where I'm the human orchestrating this quite a lot. And this is where I think a Copilot Studio custom agent would be a bit better, because it could do a bit more of this orchestration stuff for me. So basically I get it to read the files, and I then run my update artifacts skill. And that's the thing that tells it, go look at all those things, compare them, and then it comes back and it does a bunch of stuff. And then, so the skill, all the stuff that's output here, the skill tells it what it should output. And it gives me, what file changed, what was before, what happens after. Here it says it was empty, the workshop log file didn't have this row, now it's going to add this row, that's fine. Business context, there's a challenge before, and the change type is going to refine that challenge, because we had a bit more information from the people about that. And then it kind of gives me a reasoning why I wanted to change, what the evidence was. So it takes from the transcript the exact quote and gives me a confidence level. So I can go through, scan all that, and there's quite a bit to review here. So it does take time, and you need to take your time to go through. But typically what I do is I start at the top, and I'll just start writing notes in here back to it saying, change this, that's not quite correct, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll get to the end, and then it gives me the options of, you can approve all, you can approve certain numbers, you can reject some. And I'll just go, here I just said approve all, because it's for the demo. And then it goes and applies the changes and tells me what it does, and then puts all the changes into my output folder here. I'll then copy them back into my SharePoint folder, so the memory is up to, it's all up to date. So that's kind of how that process works. Obviously it's a chat interface and it's very busy, but I'm finding Copilot Cowork quite a good tool for things, where this is down to we're iterating and changing things all the time, right? This is a really good tool for quickly iterating and testing things out. Yeah.
It comes to my mind, and where I'm working, I have a corporate environment, and the quality of the documentation that we get isn't always that great.
Yeah.
So what I often do is I have to go and look at the documentation and like reverse engineer what they're trying to say to get to the requirement solution rather than requirement problem. Have you considered that in this process, or do you manage that in a particular way?
Yeah, so I guess that's the great question. Maybe I'll go back to my slides. Might be easy.
Might be the skill.
Bring it up. So that's in the skills, yeah. So I'm treating, so any document I get from the client, I won't treat it as true knowledge memory. I'll put it through as source material and then get it to assess it first, right? And in my skills, that's where I tell it, kind of what kind of quality and things we're looking for, right? So for example, I've got a quality assurance skill for user stories, for example. So my clients give me a bunch of requirements, and often they do, right? And they're not always written. Then maybe there's a solution-led requirements. I've got my skill to say it always has to be a human need focused requirement versus a solution-led requirement. And so it will go and give me feedback and return those into proper requirements for the memory.
Even so, requirements is a great option, but I'm thinking even documentation, right? So documentation might be out of date.
Yep.
Is that, or there might be a design that was not fully completed. Like I had this problem today, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I thought the design was done a particular way, and then it turns out that was then overruled by another design.
Yeah.
I didn't know that when I was reading this document. Have you kind of away from just requirements?
Yeah, true. So I think you get the design document, you trust it, you think it's also truth, put it in here, it will go and update its knowledge with it. And then you have that discussion or that meeting, and you can find out, actually, this design document was incorrect, there's another one. So I would then feed into source materials, my discussion or my notes or whatever, plus the updated design document, say, hey, go and update your knowledge, and it will go and it will then go through that process of suggesting, based on what was said and based on the new document, this is what we need to change in your knowledge. And that keeps it up to date. So, because I think there's, how often do we have workshops where something's decided or said, and then you have another workshop and the opposite is said, right? And so then this will flag that up and go, hey, we've got a conflict here. You need to resolve this with the client. You need to go and ask this question. So
That's the kind of scenario.
Yeah. So it's really good at that because you can't hold that information in your head and go, oh, what is really the source of truth?
So follow-up question. So if you then have questions, decisions that were made in phase 1 and you now in phase 4, would it retrospectively go and say, hey, because there's now a decision that's been made critical in phase 4, will it go and then highlight what needs to be updated in the core system to highlight based on the decision that was made today? What do we have to go and update on, let's say, an option list or whatever it is, something simple, but that would be.
Well, so this is probably getting down the track, right? But I guess the vision that Dan and I have is it will eventually know all. I mean, it was about requirements here in your business and stakeholders and those sort of things, but eventually it will know all about your built solution as well. And you should be and because it is a really strong source of truth and you maintain it like that, you should be able to go, okay, here's the decision made. What is the impacts across the projects? And it should be able to tell you in seconds, right? Rather than, oh my God, workshops to discuss what may be or what might not be. Michael.
I share my lived experience with this.
Yep.
So those things only happen if the information that you capture in your system is complete and if your skills know to look for it, right? So to Amelia's point, the agent is only going to be as good as the skills that you give it, right?
Yeah.
So what you might need to think about in systems like this are multiple perspectives or multiple personas that you apply to the problem that you're thinking about. So for example, when I prepare for customer conversations, I will often prepare a set of material, maybe even a demo, and I have a specific skill that I have in GitHub Copilot that acts as a CFO or acts as a blah and critiques my presentation for things like, so what, why now, why Microsoft, why do anything, things like that, right? So in this type of scenario, it's really important to think about the other half of your brain that needs to think about the negative questions or the unhappy path scenarios like you've pointed out, Ben, and you've pointed out, Amelia, and build that into the skills so that the agent that's evaluating the thing knows to think about those other things and not just look for the happy path, right? And that's really hard because you need to think differently as a consultant or as a customer. You need to think about how you execute those skills and make sure you build them into your model, your system. And you need to remember to execute those skills when you're doing stuff, right? So often I will go and build what I think is a great demo and forget that I've got that alternate persona thing, and I'll go and present it to a customer and they'll go, oh, that was great, except for blah. And I thought, oh, I forgot to do the critical thinking part of my preparation pack. So all of these things become learned experiences that you figure out, right? But the system, if it doesn't know that there's documentation missing, if it doesn't know that there's this other design or it's making decisions along the way, won't remember it the next time it picked up the conversation, right? To save you tokens, the smaller amount of context that you give every conversation you have, the less it costs you. But it means that you need to persist in your memory all of those things that are important. So like a register of design decisions, et cetera, are things that you must persist in anything like this. SharePoint, OneDrive, whatever it happens to be, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's not a magic system. Like there is a huge amount of work between the person working with the agent, right? And so if you don't have a skill there already, but you want it to do something, you can chat with it. This is why I quite like code. You can chat with it and get it to analyze it from someone's perspective, go through a whole bunch of work. You're happy with the output, go then, hey, what we've just done, can you turn that into a skill for me? And
that's the secret sauce.
Then you call the skill again, and if it doesn't quite do, you go, hey, you didn't do this quite right. Can you do it slightly different next time? And then it'll go up that, and you tell it to update the skill again. So there's a huge amount to this. That's why I've got these arrows going in and out of Copilot Cowork, because it's building its skill. I'm getting it to build its skills based on the feedback as well, and the memory. And yeah, it's a bit,
All those arrows are costing money.
and it all costs money. And it's, yeah, it's a bit to that as well. All right, at the back.
Thank you. So I am like more into software testing. I have like strong background in the area. So I'm just like thinking like instead of scale, if we like can write a small Python program that can be like integrate with the OpenAI, and it will be like covering all the decision making things, the happy scenarios, the edge cases, everything into the in the from that file, instead of like you are maintaining the skill file, that open API will be like calling from the Python and will be like updating in a way that it will be like at the same time it is like giving the update scenarios, all the critical paths as well, and the other cases as well. Might be I'm like thinking in a way.
Yeah, so you're running, and I'm not sure I quite understand this. I'm not I'm not super technical, sorry. Yeah.
So I think what's happening is, so one of your outputs of your documents is UAT testing scripts or whatever, which is, or automated testing.
Yeah.
So instead of about all the outputs that you had on the right-hand side, one of them is take all of these documentations or all of the thing that's all the knowledge, memory,
Yeah.
and apply it to what is the end result for the UAT or the testing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and same we can like do with the documentation part as well. Like instead of like maintaining the skill.md file by yourself, we can like integrate with the OpenAI, and it can be like definitely deciding your part all the cases. That
Like, so having like another.
Are you saying like
Review.
you add the
Anyway.
functional consultants? Obviously, you've got a time frame, but if you're the originator and you've got, from their perspective, they've got a functional consultant that wants certain requirements, you want to add that just to make sure it's going to work. Is that what you said?
Yep, but from the other part you are like highlighting it. I'm like thinking in a way that your Copilot is somehow will be like directly integrated with the OpenAI API key, and that will be like making the decisions for all the inputs that you are making. Whether it's like functional, documentational, form of requirements.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely put other AI tools in here, right? And I think there's another pattern where I've got a skill to create an artifact, and another skill to review and critique the artifact, right? Just to make sure that it is correct. So that kind of helps a lot of the human review. But I mean, at the moment, the way it's set up, it's still the human in the middle of this is very reliant on that. AI is not doing all the work. There's a lot of knowledge you need to transfer to make the skills and expertise, right? And so that's where, humans are still massively important in all of it. Yeah, it's not. I don't see our jobs going anytime soon. Hey Tim, we're at time. Any other questions?
I have a question. Is there a skill that you could bring up on screen just to show us the level of detail that you need to go into? Obviously, one that's not sensitive.
Yeah. I'm got some of my demos here where if I've got anything closed down, I'm not going to show anything. But I think if I click on this and go to artifacts, here's it. And so to create these skills, I don't write these from scratch. I get Copilot to create them for me, right? Like you just describe what you want to do, and it's an iterative process, right? So you run the skill. You say, I don't like that. You should change that. It should be this, and it just goes in. Yeah, so it kind of goes on and on. But here's the skill here. But yeah, it's pretty lengthy. It's got 10 steps. There's a lot in there. But I didn't write any of this. This is all AI's written it for me, and I've just gone back and forth and gone, this is incorrect. This is correct. I like this. I don't like this. Even like, even just brainstorming ideas. Like, what do you think about changing this? What would the impact be? And it's just like chatting with a human. Yeah. So that's an example. But yes, they're quite in depth. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. But I guess I think if you want to get if you're new to all this, I would just start writing a skill. And there's heaps of skill libraries on the internet as well. We can go and look at existing skills. Just use one skill to do one task, and so a task that you do over and over again. So write one skill for that, and then it'll start, kind of thinking in how these things work. So at the back.
Just last like thing question. I'm just like curious, what if your skill.md file corrupted or anything or it deleted? What your system will be like gonna do?
If it gets corrupted, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not saving these, not versioning anywhere else, but I've actually noticed Copilot does makes a few different copies of them at the moment.
Go back in history and just recreate.
But they're in SharePoint, or they're in OneDrive. If you're doing Cowork, they're in OneDrive. They're all backed up by.
So the solution, So the solution will be like simple. If like your skill file may be like corrupt, it should like first check the skill file is in place. If it is not, then it should be like recreate that file and try to like give like faulting a system or anything like that can be like implemented in the solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably comes down to the default, how it's like how the AI tool works. I mean, I haven't factored any sort of, this file may be corrupted or anything like that. I just trust that Cowork is going to do its thing, and
I'm just like talking about with the tester part, so that's why I'm like highlighting these cases that this should be like entertained in a system to like have the mature and up to date things in a way that user experience, or when you ever like presenting anything in front of clients, so you will be like having all the cover cases around your system covered.
Yeah, so this is probably very early days, right? But one thing you're thinking about is if a team of people are using the skill, how do we govern who updates it? If someone goes and updates and makes a mistake, those sorts of scenarios. Yeah, and so there's a bit of maturity to come to come in here for sure. Yeah. No, thank you. Nathan?
Yeah, this is actually going to be a huge area. This is definitely the year of skills. But what we found in kind of our frontier firm experience was that on my team, we had 4 same, but different skills to make the PowerPoint decks use our company branding. And so it's like, which one do you use? Which one don't you use? If we've got conflicting skills, which so there's it's the Wild West when it comes to skills at the moment, but I still wouldn't let that put you off using them, because this is the way.
I think it's not about just the skill, it's also who you're presenting to. Who you're presenting to. If you're presenting to your customer and you're presenting to which level you're presenting, or if it's a operations versus marketing, then that so slightly change.
Yeah, you might even end up having, I can imagine a world where you have different skills, like to do the same document for different clients, they have different preferences.
Yeah, but we started with, we just didn't want it to look like, we didn't want our slide decks to look like they came out of Copilot. Use this template, make it look like that. So and so we've got at least 4 versions of it. So
I'll choose. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
One last one. Yeah. One thing that I think Dani said way in the beginning is he does a little bit of research, what's happening globally when he's on his walks. So he doesn't look like just at the customer, but the customer, the industry, and what's happening either globally or for that region. And I think if you can apply those rules back all the way to requirements, to changes, because we had a fuel crisis. If you can take that all the way back, you would have something that will also compound and add value.
Yeah, imagine if you had a salesperson had access to this, right, and goes, okay, we've got the situation going on now. Identify me opportunities that we could implement into the system to help them through this, right? Like there's endless possibilities.
Try selling a laptop now versus 6 months ago, a laptop was $2,000. Now it's $5,000. So even just that little bit for a company, it's a massive deal, because not just it's doubled the price, but it's also
It explodes with what what is possible with all this. Right? Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much. We're a bit over time, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Dani, coming in from Australia. Very
Thank
much.
you.